Saving America one entrepreneur at a time, it's the Biz Wrap Podcast with your host, Michael Manahan.
It's Biz Wrap Radio, the show that celebrates entrepreneurs and small business with your host, small businessman, educator, and author, Michael Manahan.
And welcome to another edition of Biz Wrap Radio. This is your host, Michael Manahan. Thank you so much for joining me today. Biz Wrap Radio, we are the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. I'm in studio today and I don't have a guest. I was really busy this past week, and that's a good thing, I guess. I've heard actually a lot of people are really busy right now. I'm not sure if that's a good sign or a bad sign. Clearly the economy seems to be doing better. I've been trying to hire some accounting people for a couple of my client companies. As many of you know, I do financial advisory and consulting for small and mid-cap market companies. Do interim part-time CFO assignments as well. And currently I'm working with a number of very interesting companies. But a few of those companies need to hire people, and we were out there trying to hire accounting people, and my goodness, I can tell you something, it is not easy. There is, it appears to be anyways, a shortage of qualified accounting people out there, and then I talked to my associates in other areas of the business, whether it be production or whether it be finance, marketing, sales, and all of them are expressing the same sentiment, that it is increasingly difficult to find employees to work for your company, at least quality employees. And nowadays a lot of the job searching activities and recruiting is being done online, and there's some good things and some bad things about that. The good things are that from a company's perspective, you can get very wide exposure for your job ad. You can use places like Indeed.com and Monster.com and a number of other job sites that basically you can advertise your job, and people who are visiting the site will apply to it. And there's even some consolidators out there where if you go and you post your job on one site, it will populate to many other sites. So you have a lot of visibility with people who are potentially looking for work. And that's the great thing. You're casting a wider net. Remember years ago, if you were going to run a job ad, you picked the local newspaper, and they had an employment section called the want ads, and you ran your ad there for a week or 2 weeks, what have you. But it really took somebody opening up the newspaper, looking at the want ads, reading your ad, and then applying. And that was a time-consuming process. So now what happens is somebody's looking for a job. They go to one of these job websites. They register on the job website, and then they have access to all of the jobs that are being advertised. And applying for the jobs becomes really simple, because pretty much all they have to do is click on the job, and instantaneously the prospective employer will be sent the resume. The problem with that is, back when you put an ad in the newspaper and somebody had to actually sit down and consciously type a letter and perhaps print out a resume and fold it up and put it in an envelope and put a stamp on it and take it down to the local mailbox. Somebody who was looking for work didn't just apply to anything. It took too much time and energy. So people were focused. They really thought about the job, and they really said, am I qualified before I apply for that job? But now what happens, because you can load your resume up to Indeed.com as an example, and there is basically no screening to match your skills with the jobs that are being advertised. You're just able to apply to any job you want, and it literally a click of your mouse and you have applied. So what happens if I, as an employer, put in my job ad that I'm looking for a person with certain skills or certain qualities, a certain level of experience? The temptation for the job seeker is to ignore everything I've put in my ad, because it doesn't take any time whatsoever to apply for that ad. It's basically a click and you're done. You've applied for it. So what I'm finding today is when you use some of these job websites, yes, you do get a ton of resumes in and you can get them in very, very quickly. But at the same time, you're getting a lot of really, really, really unqualified people. I mean, I had a job ad for an accounting manager. Now, this is a person who needs, at least a bachelor's degree, maybe even a master's degree. Somebody who understands accounting, has fairly in-depth experience in accounting, maybe a major in accounting with their bachelor's degree, maybe working on their CPA or their CMA or some other accounting designation. I mean, this is an accounting manager position, somebody who not only understands how to manage and run an accounting department, but also understands the rules of accounting and how to produce quality financial statements. I mean, I was getting resumes in from people whose experience consisted of 6 months working at Kentucky Fried Chicken as a cashier. Now, this is absolutely crazy. So it's while on the one hand you're able to cast a wide net as an employer, get exposure for your job ad to a lot of potential employees, on the flip side, you're also subject to an inundation of unqualified people who, with just a click of their mouse, are applying for your job. That makes it even more challenging, because instead of perhaps back in the days when you did this through the newspaper, you got 30 or 40 resumes in the mail in response to your job ad. I'm seeing, literally 30 and 40 resumes coming in a day, and many of those resumes are completely unqualified people that simply cannot do the job. So what do you do? Well, it's just something you have to put up with, but I think what you have to become really good at is weaning out the people who are interested. So what we developed is a technique I use for a couple of my clients, and what we do is we come up with a questionnaire that goes back to the employee, or the prospective employee, person who applied for the job, and that questionnaire basically re-emphasizes some of the things we're looking for, tries to ask a few pertinent questions that would get a person who wasn't really, really interested not to bother responding to that email, and that maybe even asking in that email for the person to write up something, a paragraph or two about some particular topic. And from my experience, what I'm seeing is you send that back to 10 people who have applied for the job, and one of those people will actually respond. The other 9 will not respond. They simply won't bother, either because they are lazy, because they're already employed and they're just looking and they're not really serious, or because they're simply not qualified for the job and they realize they're not qualified for the job. So that's a little trick. We use it particularly for those resumes that come in off of these major job sites like Indeed.com and many of the others that are out there. There's ZipRecruiter.com. I mean, there's just so many of them. But make it tough. Don't make it easy for the people to respond, and don't just say, "Hey, are you really interested in this job? Thanks for applying." You've got to ask some pertinent questions, like something perhaps about their experience, or can you tell me a time when you've solved a specific problem, or what do you know about a particular topic in accounting? If they're not willing to put in the effort to respond to your email, then chances are they're not a qualified candidate for your particular job, and that's a good way to weed out those people. And again, my experience is send an email like that back to those 10 job respondents, and one will give you an answer. Hey, that's a tip from Mike Manahan here at BizRap Radio for those of you out there trying to recruit employees and work your way through some of these employee recruiting websites. With that, we're going to break for commercials. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to BizRap Radio. Your host, Michael Manahan. Again, thank you for joining me today. If you just tuned in, we are the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. And, normally I try and have guests on the show, and I do a few shows myself, but I really like to have guest experts in different fields who can help small business people and entrepreneurs do what they do. But I'm an entrepreneur myself. I run my own business, and in addition to being a university professor, I teach finance and accounting at California State University, Dominguez Hills. But I'm really, really busy right now. My consulting practice is absolutely booming. I have absolutely more work than I can handle, which means I don't have as much time as I would like to work on my radio show, which is really a passion of mine. I love helping entrepreneurs. I also am a volunteer at the South Bay Entrepreneurial Center in Torrance, California. That South Bay Entrepreneurial Center is an organization where business types who've had successful careers and what have you, they mentor and help fledgling new enterprises, and it is just a tremendous amount of fun. And those of us who do it just love doing it. We love helping these small businesses, the new entrepreneurs. And I think we are really, really good at adding value and helping those businesses get off the ground. We've had quite a number of success stories, and that's really pleasing when that happens. So, I'm wondering if everybody is as busy as I am right now, and part of the issue that we have as business people is managing opportunity. I do consulting work. I'm a professor. I do my radio show. I don't have a lot of spare time. I don't have a lot of free time, and I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. And they get very excited about what they're doing and where they're going with their businesses. But they get so excited, it seems that they are uncertain as to which of the many opportunities that sit in front of them they should actually pursue. And, I'll give you an example. I have a company I did a little bit of work with. The company is in the marijuana business. And, of course, here in California, they've legalized marijuana, not only for medical use, but for recreational use. And that is going to open up a host of business opportunities. Now, this company is familiar with the marijuana industry. The founder of the business was an individual who used cannabis when he had cancer, and claims that using the cannabis helped him recover and help that cancer go back into remission. But he is well positioned to take advantage of the business opportunities that are going to come about as a result of the legalization of marijuana. And I'm just going to take the moral aspect out of it for a moment, because there's, I'm sure, some people listening who think, marijuana, that's terrible, that shouldn't be legal. And there is that opinion, not to mention the fact that at the federal level, marijuana is still a controlled substance, and there's no indication that the Fed is going to make it any easier, the federal government, that is going to make it any easier for people to engage in the marijuana business. But the reality is there's a lot of people in the business and a lot of people trying to get into the business, and it is predicted to be a growth industry, and when you have a growth industry, you have opportunity. So back to the individual that I know. He understands cannabis. He understands the cannabis business, but he has just so many opportunities in front of him. Where does he take the business? He could grow cannabis. He could distribute cannabis. He could own a manufacturing company that formulates products or manufactures products out of cannabis. Those products could be edible products such as brownies and cookies. It could be cannabis tea. It could be lotions and oils. It could be products designed to be used by a dermatologist. It could be products designed to be used in a health spa. It could be products designed to be sold over the counter in a retail location. And the list goes on and on and on. And every time I talk to this entrepreneur, he's listing off all of the opportunities that appear in his industry. And yes, these are great opportunities, and he and or somebody else is going to make money off of these opportunities. But his problem, he's not focusing on any opportunity. It's really difficult as a small business to be too broadly diversified. You need to stimulate the old Tom Peters saying you need to stick to your knitting. I think that's more important when you're small. You really understand what is our niche, what are we good at, where can we make the most money, where can we bring a product to market the quickest, where is the least amount of competition, how much capital do we have to deploy in the activities we're trying to accomplish, and finally, are we going to be a manufacturer? Are we going to be a distributor? Is our expertise going to be sales and marketing? What is going to be the core expertise of our organization? And you really have to answer those questions. And then once you've answered those questions, what you need to do is hone in on that one opportunity that presents the greatest opportunity for you to monetize the business. That means basically for you to make money. How can you get your product to market? And that means you have to do a lot of thinking about your customers and how your customers are going to buy from you. And please do not make the classic mistake that I see so many entrepreneurs make, which is to underestimate their customers, and maybe underestimate's not the correct word. What I'm trying to say is I've heard so many entrepreneurs, they'll say, well, why do your customers buy your product? And they have an opinion as to why the customers buy the product. But really, they've never empirically tested it. They've not done customer surveys. They've not gotten a number of customers in the room and tried to talk to the customers. Their stories are anecdotal, and sometimes on top of that, they're really wishful thinking. So, as opportunities present themselves, you've got to examine them, because on the flip side, that's where you can make business, is from opportunities. Sometimes they just drop in your lap, and if you don't move on them, if you don't take advantage of them, you've missed out, and opportunity missed. And I've heard that one many times too. I mean, I always remember my father years ago was looking for a business opportunity to get into, and he looked at a McDonald's franchise. This is back in the 1970s. He looked at a McDonald's franchise, and he came away with the opinion that it was just another burger store, and there was already too many burger stores in the neighborhood, so he did not buy the McDonald's franchise or open the McDonald's franchise. He went in and did some other business, and business was successful, but I'm not sure it would have been as successful or was as successful as a McDonald's would have been. So, on the one hand, you've got to look at opportunity, but on the other hand, you've got to understand that you only have so many resources. You only have so many human resources. You only have so many capital resources. You only have so much bandwidth that you can spread around. And if you're trying to do too many things, or if you can't figure out of all the things you could do which ones to focus on, you're going to run into trouble. At some point in time, you've got to, if you will, hitch your wagon to a pony and follow that pony and make the best of it. You cannot be attacking as a small business, as a small entrepreneur, multiple markets, multiple territories, multiple product lines, multiple distribution systems. It's just too much. Your organization will fail because you're spreading yourself too thin. You've got to look at it realistically, say, which one of these products has the greatest likelihood of success? Which customer base am I going to target? Which distribution channel makes the most sense for me? How can I reduce my risk and increase my chances of this being successful? And then once you've made that decision, then you can go for it. Then it's pull out all the stops and attack that particular market with that product with an absolute passion. Don't spread yourself too thin, and don't get waylaid by all of the opportunities that come along. You can't do everything at some point in time. You got to focus and figure out what it is you're going to do to actually make money in your business. Hey, this is Mike Manahan, your host, BizRap Radio. Thanks again for listening today. I really do appreciate it. And we'll be back right after these messages. And welcome back to BizRap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan. Thanks for joining me today. If you have been listening to the show so far this hour, thank you very much for listening. If you just tuned in, we are the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. We're here trying to help small businesses do what they need to do, which is make more money, make profits, and be successful for their owners, so the owners can take care of their families, they can take care of their employees, you can take care of the community, and of course pay some taxes to Uncle Sam so Uncle Sam can do what it needs to do. I want to get into taxes on this particular issue, although it is something we talk about from time to time on BizRap Radio. Yeah, you know what? I'm changing my mind here. I'm going to talk about taxes for just a second, because I've got an associate of mine, and every time I talk about taxes, he pulls out some study or something that shows that, I don't know, in 1952 or something, 60 years ago, the tax rate, the marginal tax rate on the highest earners was actually higher than what it is today. So he uses this as evidence that no, taxes are not a problem. In fact, tax rates have dropped. Well, okay, that may be true that the marginal income tax on the highest tax bracket has dropped since 1952. I don't know. I don't have the study in front of me. I'm taking his word for it. But I've heard that from more than one party. And to those people, that is evidence that all is fine in Washington land and in Sacramento land, and that, in fact, we do not have taxes are not too high, because back in 1952, the tax rate for marginal tax rate on high-income earners was much higher than it is today. Now, of course, the reality is the marginal tax rate on high-income earners really only affects a very few number of people in this country. Let's face it, most people aren't billionaires and earning billions of dollars. And I think that the one percenters that they talk about, you've got to have a pretty good income to be a one percenter. So maybe back in 1952, you would have been affected by that high marginal tax rate. But, that is not the problem with taxes. The reason taxes are so much higher today, there's two reasons. The first one is because of all the taxes that did not exist back in 1952. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'll give you an example. Here in the state of California, we have something called the Board of Equalization. And the Board of Equalization is a taxing authority. That Board of Equalization administers some 30 plus different taxes. No, they're not income taxes, but they're taxes on everything from your vehicle to your to fuel that you put in your vehicle, to telecommunications, your cell phones, just garbage taxes. I mean, there's taxes on just about everything. Well, those didn't exist 30, 60 years ago. So if you start to add all of those up, there is a huge chunk of your earnings or your company's earnings that are being taken away from you to pay all of these taxes. So that's one example of the kind of shift in taxation that has occurred. So you can't look at, okay, income tax or even corporate tax. You can't look at the income tax or the corporate tax rate compared to 1950 without taking into account all of the additional taxes that did not exist in 1950. And there are literally tens of thousands of them across the country. One of my clients is in the telecommunications business. And as a telecommunications provider, by the way, not a huge company, they have a very specialized niche in telecommunications that they adhere to, but they are paying somewhere around 10% of their revenue to the government every month in telecommunications taxes. There's telecommunications taxes go to the city, there's ones go to the county, there's ones go to the state, there's ones go to the federal government. And guess what? They just pass along that to the consumer. So our customers who use our telecommunications services are paying that tax. And it's a 10%. That's what the tax is. That's what it adds up to. And in fact, some cases it's higher than that. There's a multitude of these taxes. So when you say, well, the tax rates aren't any higher, you really have to be specific. You have to say, you want to know what? Maybe the income tax rates are not any higher. But there are a lot of other taxes, and that means it's an ever-increasing piece of your paycheck or your business's earnings that are being eaten up in paying these taxes. So if anybody says to you, some of your friends who think that the government needs more money, if any of your friends say to you, the marginal tax rate on high-income earners was higher in 1952 than it is today, you need to point out to them that argument is really irrelevant, because now so much of the taxation that occurs in this country is not income tax. It's not state income tax. It's not federal income tax. Yes, those are big components, but there are literally tens of thousands of other taxes at the city, the state, the county, and the federal government level. And and a lot of them are completely hidden. You would never know that those taxes are actually charged and those taxes exist. So anyway, I really wasn't going to talk too much about taxation today, but once I mentioned it, I wanted to just bring that to everybody's attention. I do want to mention the activities that are going on in Washington right now to change our healthcare system. And those who listen to my show know we're not a political show. We're not Democrats. We're not Republicans. On this show, we don't support any one party or the other. What we do support, though, is common sense, and particularly common sense in government when it affects small business people. And I don't think there's any bigger nightmare to the small business person than the area of healthcare. It is confusing. It is challenging. Administratively, it takes up a ton of time for the small business people that want to offer healthcare services to their employees. And I don't know anything that I've seen that the proposals the Republicans are making right now are going to make things any better than the bad stuff that happened under Obamacare. I mean, I really do think this is one of those situations where we really almost need to go back and start from square one and tear the system down and rebuild it. And let's start off with the first healthcare item that is just completely wacky and bizarre. Why is it that the bulk of people in America today get their health care from their employer? You go to other countries, you don't get your health care from your employer. You buy health insurance on a public market. Sometimes it's private, sometimes it's a government. program, and in a lot of countries there's a combined program. People often point out Canada, and I'm not going to rave about the Canadian healthcare system because believe me, you don't want to have a serious illness in Canada. A lot of those Canadians come down here to the U.S. to get treated because basically it's a wait until you die situation up in Canada. I've heard months and months and months just to get simple things like MRIs or CAT scans done. That's not the issue. The issue is that in Canada you can participate in the government healthcare program. You can buy some additional insurance from a private insurance company. But it's not something that somebody relies on. Oh, I need to get my insurance from my employer. But there's this crazy thing here in the United States that you need to get your health insurance from your employer. And if you don't get your health insurance from your employer, it is really, really difficult to buy health insurance. And that just doesn't seem to me to make any sense. We have situations where people stay with a company. They won't leave a company because they don't want to lose their health benefits. We have other companies that offered various health benefits as a form of enticing employees. It is really just a crazy, wacky situation. And then as an employer, I can deduct the cost of the health insurance that I pay to my employees. My employees do not have to pay tax on that. Yeah, my employees, it's a tax-free benefit. So I spend $500 for Charlie. I get to deduct it as a business person as a legitimate business expense, but Charlie does not have to claim it as a taxable benefit. Charlie doesn't pay tax on the $500. But guess what? It is really difficult and tricky if you pay your medical expenses yourself to deduct them for tax purposes. So we got this crazy double standard, and it really causes small businesses a lot of problems and difficulties. Hey, look, we're coming up for commercial break, so I'm going to have to leave you with that thought. We'll be back right after these messages with BizRap Radio. And welcome back to BizRap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan. Thank you so much for joining me today. It really is. I have so much fun doing this show, and I love of talking about business and small business and entrepreneurs, and love having guests. Don't have a guest on the show this week. I mentioned earlier I've been super, super, super busy with my consulting practice and helping my clients make more money. Yeah, that's one of my goals, is how I can help my client companies make more money, and helping some raise money. And before we went to break, about healthcare and how the Republicans are busy trying to introduce some changes in healthcare, and they're talking about a 3-part process, and I don't know where it's all going to end up. But what I just don't see anybody focused on is the issue of peeling healthcare away from the employers. I just don't even think that it just should be eliminated. We should just have nothing. But enough employer wants to contribute or pay to an employee something for which the employee can go purchase health care, that's a different story. I mean, I know I've worked for a couple of companies that gave me a car allowance. Now, they didn't go out and buy the friggin' car for me. They gave me a car allowance. And then I went out and chose to spend that money wisely to get the biggest bang for the dollar. So which really brings us up to the second issue about healthcare insurance. I don't think we are going to fix healthcare in this country until we can start to address cost. Yeah, that's right, cost. I had a kidney stone. It caused me a little bit of problems. I spent a day in the hospital. They ran this test, that test, and the other test. That one day in the hospital, the bill was $17,000. Yes, that's right, $17,000 for one day in the hospital and running a bunch of tests. Now, I'm sorry, I just think that is ridiculous. Now, ultimately, the insurance company did not pay $17,000 because the insurance company has negotiated prices with the medical providers, but still, it's still a lot of money that the insurance company paid, and then I had to pay quite a big chunk of money. I didn't mind paying my share. I figure that's part of it. I know what the plan provided, but it just seemed ridiculous. And I started to think as a business person, what drives up cost? Why are the costs, not the costs of health insurance, but the costs of actually delivering healthcare services, why are they so high? And I really had to go back to Economics 101. The reality is that it's a function of supply. It's a function of supply and demand and control. The classic economic theory says if you increase demand, prices will go up. If you decrease demand, prices will go down. On the flip side, if you increase the supply, there is more available, then prices will go down. And if you restrict supply, prices will go up. Well, it seems to me we in the United States have restricted the supply of healthcare in part through government regulation. We live not too far from the border. I sometimes here in Los Angeles, and I sometimes go down to Mexico. Love Mexico, and even cross the border into Tijuana. And I go to Costco in Tijuana, and I can go there and I can buy, as an example, antibiotics to treat certain illnesses without getting a prescription from a doctor. I can buy things in Costco in Mexico that here in the United States I would have to buy I would have to get a prescription from a doctor. Now, not only are these items less expensive in Mexico, but you don't have to go to the trouble of actually getting a doctor to write you a prescription. Well, you just think about that. Give you a perfect example. Viagra. Okay, Viagra here in the United States, to get Viagra, you've got to get a prescription from a doctor. Down in Mexico, you do not. So what does that mean? I don't know how many men use Viagra in the United States, but probably millions of them. That's millions and millions of doctor's visits where somebody's making an appointment, taking the time of the receptionist, taking the time of a medical practitioner, taking the time of the doctor, coming in, taking up office space, sitting down with the doctor. Well, doctor, guess what? I don't get an erection like I used to, so I need Viagra. Oh, the doctor says, well, then let me write you a prescription. Okay, great. You walk out with your prescription. You go down to your pharmacy. Meanwhile, the doctor charges $150 to your insurance company, and the insurance company pays the doctor something for that. Well, down in Mexico, that's completely eliminated. Now, I know what people are going to say. Well, but our system is designed to protect people. It's designed to protect people because you just don't want anybody walking in and buying drugs. I don't know if that's the case. How far does protection go? There's a lot of things you can buy that are bad for you or that you could use incorrectly. We know right now, for instance, if you drink a ton of sugary drinks, you could end up with diabetes and it's bad for you. Well, should we have to go to the doctor, get a prescription before we can go in and buy a Coca-Cola? Does that make sense? So there's this kind of double standard, and you have to believe part of it is lobbying on, from the Medical Association, American Medical Association, perhaps from the drug companies. I'm not sure where it comes in. But what we have to do is work on driving down cost. And, just regulating insurance companies is not going to drive down the cost. You've actually got to drive down the cost of delivering the services. And I think what we have in the situation we have in the U.S. today is a lot of things doctors are doing and a lot of things pharmacies are doing that, quite frankly, could be done more efficiently and could be done without the rigors that we now created. I know people, for instance, have recurring things. I got a friend who's got a reoccurring ear infection. Okay, they get it about every 6 months. They know exactly what they need. That they use the same antibiotic every time. But every time, in order to get that antibiotic, they got to go to make an appointment with the doctor, go see the doctor. The doctor looks in their ear. The doctor says, "Oh, guess what? You got an ear infection." And they say, "Yeah, of course I got it. I know I got an ear infection." "Well, let me give you a prescription for some antibiotics." "Well, I know what antibiotics I need." It's just a huge, huge waste of resources. And of course, I'm a huge believer in the tip of the iceberg theory. If you can find one or two wasteful things in our medical system like that, believe me, you're going to find thousands of similarly wasteful things going on in our medical system. So I think the government should appoint a task force, and the task force should be designed to figure out how to drive down cost by eliminating the bureaucracy around procedures that we have here in the U.S. Another perfect example is having a doctor in attendance when a woman has a baby. In many other countries, a doctor is only in attendance if there's a complication in the pregnancy, and the baby is delivered by midwives and sometimes by just people who live in the community. But we're very good at figuring out how to pile on costs. But at the end of the day, somebody has to pay for that. And guess who it is? It's you and me. So I'd like to see us figuring out how to reduce costs, how to provide insurance to everybody. Yeah, okay, that's one issue. But more importantly, it would be a lot less problems in this United States if we could figure out how to drive down costs so it just didn't cost so much to get yourself, as they say, a Viagra pill because you have you want to have a better erection. It's just crazy. That's it. Those are some of my thoughts today. Here at BizRap Radio, we're fixing the United States of America through a fundamental concept that individuals pursuing their own economic interests in free markets will create more prosperity for more people than can ever be achieved through government regulations and a planned economy. With that, have yourself an absolutely fabulous St. Patrick's Day. Don't drink too much of that green beer. That's what I'm going to be doing. I can tell you, with a name like Manahan. Got the luck of the Irish in me, that's for sure. Check out our website, contact me, and we will be back next week with another edition of Biz Rap Radio.